Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome. Continuing our discussions on discrimination based approaches to understand neuronal encoding and decoding, we now move on to um, using the biologically plausible mechanisms of decoding, bringing that whole idea of what the postsynaptic neuron can understand or not understand depending on its properties that we provide it to have. We can quantify discrimination and understand the dependence between the stimulus and response. So, here we will combine the two approaches also, that is, we will be using discrimination and also quantifying the dependence, or at least finding a lower bound of the amount of dependence between the stimulus and response, and along with it we will also bring in the idea of the biologically plausible mechanisms of decoding. So, if for a bit we leave out the biologically plausible mechanisms of decoding, we can actually apply this technique for any sort of measure of discrimination, even with D prime. Let us say some capital N number of stimuli that we are using, and we present, so let us say stimulus 1, stimulus 2 up to capital N. So, there are capital N stimuli. Now, each of these stimuli are presented, let us say capital M times. So, each of these are being presented capital M times, and so in each of these presentations we have spikes. So, let us say this is our total time t again of the stimulus, and within each of those presentations we have an measured spike train that is represented by this dots. So, this is repetition 1, repetition 2, and similarly up to repetition M. Similarly, for the next stimulus we have some other spike train, first repetition, second repetition, and mth repetition. Similarly, for the nth stimulus we have the first repetition, second repetition, and mth repetition. So, essentially we have m times n spike trains that we have observed by presenting presenting the n stimuli, each of the n stimuli m times. So, based on these spike trains, now we are asking the question that can we quantify how much dependence there is between the stimuli and the responses. Now, we as we have motivated this idea of discrimination based on the fact that we cannot really parameterize the stimuli from 1 up to capital N, or even if we can, we are not explicitly going to use it. because there may be too many parameters that are involved. So we just want to quantify the dependence between them and use discrimination as a methodology to quantify that. So let us say that these spike trains, depending on whatever response measure, the response measure can be overall rate, the response can be KL distance over the entire duration capital T for assuming any kind, I mean without assuming any distribution. We can use a Gaussian assumption and use d prime as a measure of discrimination that is based on overall rate. We can use response measure to be in bins of very small size and then quantify the distance or the discrimination between two spike trains or two stimuli based on KL distance in bin sizes delta and summing them with independence or using KLD using dependence, and then again the other forms of KLD, that is delta that is large where k spikes are possible in each bin, without dependence and then with dependence, and so on. The list can go on. And there can be other functions or measures of how different the two spike trains are depending on some other measure of response. So let us say, I mean this list can be endless, and here to restrict that list we will be bringing in the idea of biological plausible decodability. That is, not all of these are possible by a postsynaptic neuron to do, and so we will restrict this set by assuming certain properties in the postsynaptic neuron. So that part we will leave out for now. Let us say we have some measure of distance between two spike trains, that is, let us say spike distance metric, some way to quantify how different two spike trains are. So which can be anywhere in that list, but let us now say that it is a measure that is called let us say capital D, something like that. So using this metric, if we quantify the distances between spike trains, we can use this entire set of responses to create what we will call a confusion matrix, which is sort of the joint distribution that we will be after in order to quantify the dependence. So what is that? So let us say we have capital N stimuli 1, 2 up to capital N, and for stimulus let us say I, and we have responses are I j, that is I goes from 1 to capital N, j goes from 1 to capital M. That is the response. What we mean by R is the spike train, or some function of the spike train, which can be also rate, and we will be quantifying the distance between pairs of spike trains, which is let us say R I j and R I prime j prime. Let us say d of R I j and R I prime j prime is the measure of distance between the response to the jth repetition of the ith stimulus and the j primeth repetition of the I primeth stimulus. That is essentially two rows of this entire data set of spike trains. So, I'm sorry. So with this distance, let us say we first start with stimulus 1. And first we consider within the stimulus 1, that is our I is 1 and I prime is also 1. Now we take j equals 1 and our j prime is 2, then 3, then up to capital M. So what are we doing? We are computing the distances of the first spike train for the first stimulus with the distances from the other spike trains of the same stimulus. So we will have basically a set of distances that the first spike trains have with the spike trains produced by the same stimulus that the first one. So that means that we can get an average of those distances, and we will say that the spike train 1 of stimulus 1, that is I1 J1, that is R1 J1, has a distance from stimulus 1 which is the average of or mean of the distances of R11 from R1 J prime, where J prime is varying from 2 to capital M. So this is telling us how far apart the first spike train is for the first stimulus from the rest of the spike trains in response to that same stimulus. Now that is some value. Let us say this value is some particular L, 1 from the rest of the same stimulus, L11. Similarly, we will compute that first spike train's distance from second stimulus's spike trains, that is the capital M spike trains produced by the second stimulus, and distance of the first spike train of the first stimulus, the average of those, that is L12. Similarly, L13 and so on up to L1 capital M. So this is for the first spike train. So for stimulus's first repetition, so we need to provide, we need to let ourselves know that it is the first stimulus. So we will put a superscript of 1. So now what we will be asking is that can we say based on these distances that the first spike train, that is R11, is it, if we did not know what the stimulus was, can we say which stimulus produced that spike train? Which we will say is that the group to which it is closest, that is, if the first spike train is closest to its own group, that is L11 superscript 1 is the least of all these, then we can say that okay, this spike train is closest to its own group. So, we will assume that it is coming from the first stimulus itself. If it is closest to the third and L1 superscript 1 suffix 1 1 is larger than L superscript 1 subscript 1 3, and let us say L superscript 1 1 3 is the smallest in this set, then we will say that since it is closest to the third stimulus, the first spike train has been produced by the third stimulus. It is as if because I do not know what stimulus produced the spike trains, that is a postsynaptic neuron which is somehow using this measured D of spike train distances or spike train metric. It is trying to, based on the data available to it, it is trying to assign a stimulus from which the spike train it got a stimulus to which the spike train it got is being assigned. So, now the same thing will be done for the first stimulus as second spike train to the first group, or first stimulus as rest of the spike trains, similarly to 2 and so on, L2, L1 to capital N, and this will go on till our L1 M1 up to L superscript 1 M N. So, each of the capital M spike trains produced by the stimulus 1 based on these distances is being assigned to one of the capital N stimuli. So, here that means it is providing us an estimate of the stimulus. So, if we have stimulus here and S hat, an estimate of the stimulus here, then out of the capital M spike trains produced by stimulus 1, the number of times it gets assigned to 1, number of times it gets assigned to 2, number of times it gets assigned to capital N. This square matrix can be created, at least what we discussed is the first row of the square matrix. So, that means we can say with what probability spike trains from produced by stimulus 1 is decoded as 1 or 2 or capital N. That is the number of times we assign 1 or 2 or capital N divided by capital M, which is the number of spike trains that we have, that is the probability. So, essentially what we have is a joint, or right now a conditional distribution. If we assume that each of the stimuli are equally likely, that is the probability of 1 by n of each of the stimuli, then we can write a joint distribution from the conditional distribution by multiplying by 1 by capital N, and so we will have the joint as S equal to 1, S hat equal to 1, P S equal to 2 and S hat equal to 2, P S equal to 1, S hat equal to 2 and P S equal to 1, S hat equal to N. The same thing applied to the second stimulus, P S equal to 2, S hat equal to 1, P S equal to 2, S hat equal to 2, P S equal to 2, S hat equal to N. And similarly here we have P S equal to N, S hat is 1, P S equal to 2 S hat equals P S equal to N S hat equals 2 and up to P S equals to N S hat equals to N. So, now think about it. Let us say in each and every spike train, based on these distances, we assign it to the correct stimulus. That is, for all the capital M spike trains for the ith stimulus, we find that all the spike trains are closest to its own set of spike trains, and the distances from the other spike trains is always larger. So, that means every time we are decoding the responses correctly, that is, we based on these distances we are assigning the stimulus of the spike train correctly. So, that means all the values are going to be along the diagonal here, where this is also in the diagonal, because the rest of them are 0, none of the times are we incorrect. So, in that case, this matrix is going to be simply a diagonal matrix with 1 by n in each of the elements along the diagonal. So, let us go ahead and see what happens in that case, that we have 1 by n here, 0 0 0, 0 1 by n up to 0, and there here we have 0 0 0 1 by capital N. So, we have S here, S hat here 1 2 capital N 1 2 capital N. So, we have perfect decoding. So, in this case, what is the mutual information between S and S hat? So, we know that the definition of mutual information is summation P S S hat log of P S S hat P S and P S hat. So, as you can see that our marginals of P S is user defined or experimenter defined. This P S is always 1 by n, 1 by n, 1 by n, and our P S hat is also 1 by n, 1 by n, and 1 by n. So, in this summation, we will for each pair here, we will have only one value that is non-zero, and that is when only S and S hat take on the same values. So, we will essentially have capital N equal values. So, capital N times P S hat S hat is 1 by n, log of P S S hat in that case is 1 by n divided by 1 by capital N into 1 by capital N. So, now what we have is, it is simply log of capital N. Now, what is log of capital N here? It is simply representing the entropy of the random variable S, because it can it has capital N equally likely values and its entropy is log n, and we also know that the maximum mutual information between two random variables in this discrete case is the minimum of the entropy of the two random variables, and in this case both the random variables have equal entropy S and S hat, which is log n, and it is reaching the maximum mutual information, that is log n, and that is what is expected if we have complete understanding of the dependence, that is the maximum dependence. So, if our D is the choice of our distance is correct in the sense that it is able to perfectly discriminate the capital N stimuli, then we see that the mutual information reaches the maximum. So, we can indeed quantify the mutual information between stimulus and response. Here I again ask you to take a minute to think about what I just said. We were all talking about, all this while we were talking about mutual information between S and S hat, and now I said the dependence between stimulus and response. So, there is a leap here, and now we remember that if we recall the data processing inequality, what is S hat? S hat is nothing but a function of the response. That is, our from our S we are getting a response, and our from response, by making a function of the response, we are getting S hat. So, this is again the same sort of Markov chain description of sequence of three random variables that are related in this manner, where given the response, S and S hat become independent of each other. And so, we know that the mutual information between S and R is greater than equal to the mutual information between S and S hat. So, what we have obtained by this calculation is that we have found a lower bound of the dependence between the stimulus and response. That is, this is the least amount of dependence that must be there between the stimulus and response, because this mutual information of ISS hat is the minimum amount of mutual information that ISR has, and we have computed ISS hat. So, with this we can in a way quantify the dependence between stimulus and response, albeit a lower bound. So, we have an idea of how much dependence there is between the stimulus and response, or there at least is between the stimulus and response. So, with this idea, we must remember that all we have done is chosen a distance metric where we have used this D and operated it on two spike trains, R I j and R I prime and j prime. And for all combinations of I j, I prime, j prime, based on that we have created this confusion matrix. Confusion, why do we call it confusion matrix? That is, if now if the stimulus is S and I mean the decoding method is confusing the response with response to stimulus, some other stimulus, and so that idea is captured in this matrix. So, we have drawn the example of where there is perfect decoding. So, as we will see in actual examples, that it is not going to be like that, and it is heavily dependent on what this D is going to be. So, we will have mass in these places, that is, the responses to stimulus 1 is not always decoded as stimulus 1, sometimes 2, sometimes capital N and the other ones. Similarly, the responses to stimulus 2 may have some probability of being decoded as 1 or capital N or the other ones, and so this becomes a non-diagonal, I mean it is no more a diagonal matrix, it is it has mass throughout, and the more diagonal it is, the more mutual information there is going to be, that is the less confusion there it is going to be, that is the more mass along the diagonal. Whereas if it is really spread out, let us say uniform throughout, then there is no dependence between them. Uniform throughout meaning that, let us say, each point is 1 by n squared. So each point, each mass point at there is 1 by n squared, would mean that S and S hat are independent of each other. That is, P S comma S hat is equal to P S times P S hat. That is what we see, that this denominator is equal to the numerator, that is P S S hat is equal to P S times P S hat, which means that it is independent of each other, and then the mutual information is 0. So that means if I take capital M spike trains, I equally assign it to 1, 2 or capital and up to capital N. All of them are equally assigned, and so in that way, that is, there is no information available about the stimulus in the responses, and so we would not be able to discriminate any of the two stimuli, any pair of the S's. And so in that case, the mutual information as expected is supposed to be 0. So we go from the whole range when the mass is equally distributed as product of the marginals in this confusion matrix, to it being completely diagonal. We go through the whole range of 0 mutual information to the maximum mutual information possible, and obviously in the real scenarios we will be somewhere in between in different cases. So with this idea of this confusion matrix and treating this confusion matrix as a joint distribution, as we know that to compute mutual information we only require the joint distribution of two random variables. So this confusion matrix serves as the joint distribution between S and S hat, and with this idea that from S hat is simply a function of the response R, albeit I mean it is a very complicated function of the responses, it's still a function of the response, and that is the beauty of mutual information, that it captures any kind of dependence. We cannot even imagine to, I mean start to imagine how to model in this kind of a scenario, to go from stimuli 1 to capital N to estimates of the stimuli 1 to capital N in a parametric way or in some other way. It's going to be extremely difficult. So here with this idea we will stop here, and in the next lecture we will bring in the idea of defining the D that is biologically plausible, that is a metric distance between spike trains that a neuron can use, that is the postsynaptic neuron that has to discriminate between two spike trains. If that can be defined in a particular way, then this whole mutual information calculation can be ascribed to the postsynaptic neuron playing a role in here. That is, we will be quantifying the dependence given a certain type of postsynaptic neuron. That is, that was missing so far. We had said that with any D we can do this. Next step would be to use biologically plausible Ds or biologically plausible metrics of spike trains differences or distances that real neurons may be able to compute, or based on large statistical data set, large sets of data, a neuron may learn to use such ways to discriminate, or we may be imposing certain cases on the neuron, certain properties on the neuron based on which it may be able to discriminate them. Because it won't be always possible to know what the postsynaptic neuron is, or in fact mostly we won't be able to know what the postsynaptic neuron is. So, we will look at a possible range of postsynaptic neurons and then compute the mutual information based on this discrimination. Thank you.